Welcome everyone, I'm Adam. In this problem, we're going to be finding the center, vertices, foci, and eccentricity of the ellipse given by the equation 9x squared plus 4y squared plus 36x minus 24y plus 36 is equal to 0. Then once we have done all that, we're going to sketch the equation in our graph over here. Now, to find the center, vertices, foci, and eccentricity, that all relies on our important letters A, B, H, K, and C. And we can find the vast majority of those if we could have our equation in standard form. So that's what we're going to try to do first, is take the equation we're given and write it in standard form. So we know the standard form, or at least have an idea, going to look something like x minus h quantity squared divided by something squared, a or b, we don't know yet, plus the quantity y minus k squared, again divided by a or b squared, we don't know yet, so we'll just leave it as some quantity squared, and that's equal to 1. So what we're going to do is, again, take the equation we're given and try to write it in this form, and once we have it written in that form, we can look at the components and be able to pick out our h, our k, and then hopefully our a and our b. So how can we do that to start with? Well, using as kind of a guiding light, in standard form, we have perfect squares in our numerators here. X minus some number squared and y minus some number squared. Looking at the equation we're given, we have square terms of x and y, we have first power terms of x and y, and we have some constant. So what we can do is group these things and try to complete the square to write it as an entire quantity with x squared or an entire quantity with y squared. So that's what we're going to do. Group terms and complete the square. So let's take a look at x to start with. We have 9x squared plus 36x. Okay? So between those two things, we can factor out a 9. So let's get started. So we're going to factor out a 9. 9 from our 9x squared will just give us x squared, plus 9 taken out of 36 will give us 4x. Now we're completing the square here, so I'm going to leave myself a little bit of space to find that next term, which we'll get to in a moment. But let's just work along next with our y's. So we had 9x squared plus 36x. Now we have 4y squared minus 24y. So we can group those and factor out a 4. So the positive 4 times would be y squared, and 4 taken out of negative 24 would be minus 6y. And again, in completing the square, we're going to add some extra term on the end. Okay, and this is all equal to, we're going to take our constant term 36 over to the other side. So subtracting that, this is all equal to, say, negative 36. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what we have. So in completing the square, all right, we have x squared plus some single power term. We're going to take half the coefficient of x and then square it and add that on. So half of 4 is 2, and so we add, okay, so we're going to add, say, 2 squared. And we'll get to the rest of it in a minute. Now in the next part, we're going to take half of our negative 6, which is negative 3, and adding that, so that's adding negative 3 squared. Now to balance the equation, we have to pay attention to the right-hand side. So when I add 2 squared here, keep in mind that's being multiplied through with 9. So 2 squared is 4, 9 times 4 is 36. So to balance both sides, I have to add a 36 from the first part on the right-hand side. And look at the second part of our equation. Negative 3 squared is positive 9, but that's being multiplied with a 4. And 4 times 9, again, is 36. So we're actually adding a 36 here. So we'll balance by adding a 36 here. So we take a look at that, and we see, well, a negative 36, and one of these positive 36s will cancel, leaving us with just 36 on the right-hand side. And now we'll try and clean up the left-hand side a little bit. Okay, so with completing this square, we can write at least this first part as 9 times, say, the quantity x plus 2 squared, and that's plus 4 times quantity y would be y plus negative 3, technically, squared. And we'll clean that a little bit more in a second. And that's equal to positive 36. Okay, so we're getting there. Looking at the standard form, we know that we want the right-hand side to be equal to 1. So working our way towards that, if we divide both sides by 36, that'll give us 1 on this side. But dividing all the way through on the left side, dividing by 36, and dividing by 36. And looking at our standard form, we have the square term by itself. So the 9 times x plus 2 squared and the 4 times y plus negative 3 squared, we can just rewrite that a little bit. So the 9 being multiplied up here, we can write it as 36 over 9 on the bottom. And 4 being multiplied up here, we can write that as 36 over 4 on the bottom here. Okay, so let's go through one more time of cleaning this up. So in the numerator, we'll have, right, it's instead of x plus 2, x minus negative 2, because we want to write it as x minus a number, squared. And 36 over 9 is 4, and plus, right, y plus negative 3 is just y minus 3, quantity squared, and 36 over 4 is equal to 9, and that's equal to 1. Okay, so all that work to get this in standard form. So again, what is that going to tell us? Well, it tells us what our h and our k is, but then also, if you notice, we want to know what the a and the b was. So the a is the larger number, so our 9, right, we can think of that as 3 squared, and our 4, we can think of that as 2 squared. So that's going to tell us that b is 2 and a is 3. All right, now I think we have a lot of good information. We can start answering some of our questions. So first thing that we want to know is, what's the center? So what's our center? Right, so the center again is at hk. Well, our h is negative 2 and our k is 3. So center is at negative 2, say positive 3. Okay. Now we want to know what our vertices are. Now to get to our vertices, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to plot this point of our center. So x equals negative 2, y equals 3. Here's 3, negative 2. Here is our center point. Okay. Now seeing that the a, or the larger number, is under y, that tells us our major axis is going to be going vertically. So to get to the vertices, we're going to go from our center up and down a unit of a, which is 3. So from our center, if we go up 3, right, up 3 units, getting us at point negative 2, 6, and then down 3 units, negative 2 would be 0. That's where our 2 vertices are going to lie. I'll go ahead and write those in. So our vertices are going to be at our points x value, say negative 2, 0, and negative 2, say positive 6, from what we have there. Okay, so we have our vertices and our center. Now we want to look at our foci. So the foci, and we can find that from, again, going from the center up and down a value of c in the vertical direction. So how are we going to find c? Well, we know that we have this relationship of c squared is equal to, say, a squared minus b squared. And we know what a and b are. So c squared is equal to, say, a squared, right, which is 9, minus b squared, which is 4. And so 9 minus 4 is equal to 5. And so that implies, let's see, that c, taking the square root of both sides, c is equal to, say, the square root of 5. Okay, so how does that help us find our foci? Well, the foci, and we're not going to label these in our graph up here, but we go from the center up and down a unit of c. So the foci is going to be having x value, say negative 2. Center y value is 3. We're going to go up square root 5. So 3 plus the square root of 5. And the next point from the center down the square root of, down the square root of 5. So negative 2, and the next value is 3. Y value is 3 minus square root of 5. So there's our foci. Okay, and we actually have enough to start graphing this, but we'll go ahead and complete this by finding our eccentricity, then we'll finish with the graph. So last thing, let's find the eccentricity. So the eccentricity, right, is E, which is equal to simply C divided by A. So that is just the eccentricity E is C, which we have as square root of 5 divided by A, which is 3. Okay, so that's the eccentricity. Now let's finish by completing the sketch of the graph. So we have a good basis here. We have our center point, we have our vertices. So now what we're going to do, just to help us visually before we complete this, is I'm going to sketch in our major and minor axis. So we know the major axis goes from our vertices through the center. So we have that. And again, this goes up and down a unit of A. Now the minor axis is going to go out to the sides a unit of B. And we know that B is equal to 2. So going from our center out a unit of 2, or out B, right, is going to get us to the points x equals 0, y equals 3, and x equals negative 4, y equals 3. Okay, and from that we can sketch in our ellipse. So just kind of connecting the points, going around as best we can. There we have it. So there's a sketch of our ellipse with our original equation, 9x squared plus 4y squared plus 36x minus 24y plus 36 equals 0. Thank you very much.